Hi, my name is Mariah, and I'm majoring in sociology and psychology, and I want to go into the social work field. Some of the defined ethics in social work would be commitment to clients, challenging social injustices, and respecting their clients and their confidentiality. Some ethics that I believe are absent in the social work field would be constantly providing support for the client, even if you don't agree with something that they do or say. For example, if your client believes in gay marriage and you don't, that doesn't give you the right to not help them along with their process of trying to get better. Some ethics that I believe are being threatened would be the confidentiality of the client. To start the change of being or providing confidentiality for the client is to stand up for what you believe in and let people in the workplace know what needs to be done. A little bit of background information. The Code of Ethics for Social Work was revised in the 60s to address non-discrimination, and it was revised again in the 70s to include the ethical responsibility to clients, people in the workforce, and the organization. It was revised again in the 90s to focus on fees and accepting compensation for referrals and developments in healthcare and publicity in the media. In 1999, there was another revision that said social workers might have to give out confidential information without the consent of the client. And that's the number one thing that I disagree with. I believe that there are some things that you need to give out without giving consent to the client. For example, I think you should be allowed to tell your boss if your client is contemplating suicide or if they're contemplating inflicting harm upon another human being. However, I don't agree with giving out confidential information about anything else, like if about something that happened in their family or something along those lines. I believe that whatever the client tells you, you have to keep to yourself and yourself only, unless it inflicts harm upon the client or someone else at the client, like his family or their friends or something like that. I think the trends have been pushing more towards the protection of the social worker by being able to give out confidential information without the consent of the client, and also pushing more towards being more ethical in the face of the media. I agree with the way things have been changing, but I don't agree with giving out information about a client without them knowing or without them giving any sort of consent. The clients are coming to you for help and answers, and they're putting their trust in you and making yourself seem untrustworthy by giving out confidential information is not acceptable. The biggest thing between a social worker and a client is trust, and without that, there's no way that the client is going to get any better. I believe that change is good because the world around you is changing and the ethics need to change with it. However, I just don't agree about giving out confidential information without the client even knowing, unless it's something really serious. I don't think it's okay for a social worker to go home and tell their wife or their husband something that the social worker said or did. I believe whatever the social worker or whatever the client says to you is something that you need to keep to yourself and yourself only. Online, there was this sample confidentiality agreement, and one of the first bullet points says, quote, I agree not to divulge, publish, or otherwise make known to unauthorized persons or to the public any information obtained throughout the course of the client being there. That's the number one thing that was on this agreement, is that the social worker should not be allowed to give out any sort of information without letting the client know. I had a friend, Anna, in high school who had an eating disorder, and she went to a social worker in the school, a couple of times a week. And one of our other friends noticed her getting a lot thinner, and she wasn't really eating all that much. So she knew that she was going to the social worker, so she went there and asked the social worker about, what's going on with her. And without hesitation, the social worker told her everything about her eating disorder and everything else that she told her. And so she confronted Anna about it, and Anna got really upset. And that's one of the things why I disagree with giving out confidential information. They're going to you for help and support, and by losing that trust, they're not going to get any better, because she started skipping school, she got even thinner, and she stopped talking to a lot of her friends because of it. And it's not just her that this happened to. There's many other cases of these things happening, and that's why I want to put an end to it, because people need to be able to go to social worker to get help and get advice and get some answers, and they need to be able to trust them. And without any trust, there's no way that they're going to get better. So, like I said before, I agree that change is good. I agree with the way that the code of ethics has been revised. I just don't agree with giving out confidential information without the consent of the client.